there's been a lot of talk, one or two MPs suggesting that maybe, for now, they should only meet their constituents on Zoom. I feel that would be the most terrible surrender to terrorism. What can we do so that MPs, and I've given my ideas earlier, but so that MPs can go out and meet and engage with their constituents?
Well, the short answer is not very much if we're going to hold on to our democracy in the way that we want to practice it. I mean, there won't be any one-size-fits-all solution because, after all, 650 MPs from all parts of the British Isles, some areas are much more vulnerable to terrorist incidents than others. All MPs have different arrangements. They have different types of constituency office, different types of coming and going. And I mean, you yourself, you've lived under this sort of regime in a way, and I have to a smaller extent. And I mean, what you learn and what you're told is you've got to take responsibility for your personal safety. So don't get into a regular routine. Be vigilant. Don't make it easy for anybody to know where your vehicles are or whatever it might be. And there's all sorts of things you can do, and there are some things in more vulnerable cases, or where MPs may think they're more vulnerable, or where they are, as were spokespeople for particularly sensitive issues, then it may well be that local police, constabulary, need to, take their own measures, which they won't want to announce in advance, in order to just increase the level of security. I mean, I think the biggest problem is not that MPs will occasionally be targeted, because sadly, that is the nature of modern politics throughout the world, not just here. The issue is really that we don't want to immediately to create copycat crimes. It's, the next 6 months or a year is the most important time. So we don't want 2 or 3 more of these things happening soon because of the publicity for this.
I completely understand. I mean, Michael, here's the argument I'm making, right? From 2012, 2013 onwards, it was impossible for me to go out and campaign without security, because people would throw things or try and bash me over the head. And even with security, occasionally they got through, albeit very, very briefly. But because I had private security, did not stop me campaigning on the street, did not stop me attending market day, did not stop me going around the pubs, the shops, holding public events. I did it with security with me, and because they were there, I was able to do it. Is it not time to recognise that the biggest security risk is when you pre-advertise where you're going to be on a date at a time, which is why there have been 3 attacks on MP surgeries in the last 20 years.
Yes. I mean, I take that point absolutely, but remember...
Why not? So why not, given we have hundreds, thousands of people who fought in Iraq, who fought in Afghanistan, many of whom have not settled back into jobs, all of whom are very patriotic people. They've worked fighting terrorism. They've worked with civilian populations. Aren't they people we could train to help keep our democracy alive?
Well, firstly, I mean, you are a very special case because you're a very prominent national politician. I've often said, actually, that you are the most prominent politician in Britain in the last 10 years, and yet you've never been an MP because, you represent something different in the way our democracy works, and good on you for doing that. But the issue of having private security people around for all MPs, or even a majority of MPs, raises the possibility that we'll end up with a sort of a private militia. And the chances are that will cause, the cure will be worse than the disease. It will cause too many problems, too many policing problems, and it could easily get out of hand. So I think where there are individuals who may be regarded as more insecure than others, there are things that the formal police should be doing. I'm very wary of the idea of having, as it were, too many private security people around. So you were a particular case. I understand that. But private security for a range of MPs will be a real problem, I think.
I mean, Michael, I was an MEP for 20 years as opposed to being an MP.
You were?
Yes, and yes, I led a political movement that was against the mainstream, and for all of those reasons, I was prominent. But if you think about it, I mean, David Amess, all right, he had his strong views on abortion, the death penalty, other things. He was pro-Israel. But he was not exactly a contentious figure, was he? But it's easy to see, if we analyse that Islamic terrorism is a problem that is here for the foreseeable future. Not difficult to work out the MPs that are pro-Israel. not difficult to work out the MPs that are critical of, for example, halal meat production. This is not that hard, is it really, to protect those who could be most vulnerable to this problem?
Well, to do that, we need to know much more in more detail, as you say, who is likely to be most vulnerable, and then think about that. But we don't want a blanket solution where the cure becomes worse than the disease. That's my point.
All right.
So I think we do have to think about this, but we've got to take it step by step. And remember, I mean, you and I can guess what the motives for this attack were, but we don't know yet. Until there's some authoritative statements arising from the evidence, we've got to be very careful, I think, about what we say we're going to do about it. And like you, I mean, I've been studying jihadist terror for the last 20 years. So, I've been through a lot of the junk which these people look at, the awful stuff that they read. Yeah. And it really does turn your stomach, some of it, to be honest. But we've got to be careful not to jump to conclusions until we've got some authoritative statements, I think.
Michael Clark, I understand that, but the police do say they are looking at a suspected Islamic terrorist case.
Indeed.
Thank you for coming on this evening and giving us your point of view.